Joining us is Dan Gainor. He's the director of the Business and Media Institute, and John Koifman of the National Resource Defense Council. Good to see you both. Dan, first to you, what's wrong with going green?
Well, there's nothing wrong in theory with going green. The problem is a lot of companies are doing things that don't make any financial sense.
Such as?
We went from Business Week declaring just a few months ago that going green was a great idea to suddenly little green lies, where they're admitting that a lot of the things that companies are doing to go green, whether it's carbon offsets or some sort of environmental credit for energy, these things aren't necessarily going to really help anything. They're just, I think the left would use this term, greenwashing.
Well, let's talk about carbon credits and all the sort of obscure stuff in a minute, but something simple, Dan, like fluorescent light bulbs, switching your incandescent to fluorescent. What's wrong with that? Well,
the problem with CFLs, and this is something that everybody looks at, forgets the law of unintended consequences. CFLs contain mercury. The only way to get rid of them is to recycle them through a special location. I was talking to a businessman out in Midwest. He said the nearest location for recycling is 100 miles away. So you know that people, businessmen, individuals, they're not going to recycle these like they're supposed to. So 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about it.
Let's just throw that one alone. We'll take each one of these individually to John. John, what about that? The mercury and fluorescent makes them tough to dispose of.
Sure. Well, let's come back to the top question here first, which is going green good for business? Does this make sense? And there is no question today that energy, global warming emissions are two of the top challenges facing any company that's looking to compete here in the United States and globally right now. And now, not every green rainbow is going to have a pot of gold at the end of it. Companies need to approach these challenges in the same way that they would any other core business issue.
But I want to get real specific, John, so that we know what we're talking about here. Fluorescent light bulbs.
Sure. Now, the fluorescent light bulbs has been a question that's been floating around, and it's something that I think we're well on the way to solving. NRDC has actually worked very closely with Walmart and the four major suppliers of these compact fluorescent bulbs to cut the amount of mercury in the bulbs by about half over the last year, and we think that number is going to continue to grow even smaller.
All right, let me throw that back to Dan then. If they cut the mercury in half, does that solve the problem, Dan?
Well, it still doesn't solve the problem because, of course, you're talking about increased use of the bulbs. So inevitably, what the eco people are doing is forcing another environmental problem on us, just by trying to solve one.
Eco people, you made it sound like they're the monster from outer space. They're right here.
Right. I guess I'm the eco people. Look, Dan, the amount of mercury that's saved by not burning coal in an electric power plant is actually more than you're getting from those bulbs. Now, it doesn't mean you don't ignore the bulbs. Don't take it seriously. But to put it in context, we use about a ton of mercury in compact fluorescent light bulbs this year, about 200 tons in other industrial processes.
Let me take another specific here. Federal Express had planned to go to these hybrid trucks. They decided in the end that it wasn't worthwhile. Dan, explain why.
Well, what they found out, they originally had planned to replace their fleet 3,000 trucks a year for 10 years, get rid of the whole fleet. Then what they found, they don't burn gasoline, they burn money. They cost 75% more than the other trucks. FedEx now has 100 trucks because they're responsible more to their stockholders than to some eco-insanity of the hybrid trucks.
All right.